one of the most important things about goal setting, and I talked about this on Friday morning when I was being interviewed, is it is extremely important that when you set a goal, that you also provide yourself the mental inputs to help you fuel that goal. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. So about 2 years ago, my wife and I decided that we were going to stop eating meat. Well, actually, it was more me. And she just was like, you know what? Because she's never been a really big meat eater anyway. And so she was like, well, if you do it, I'm going to do it. Right? But me, I was the self-proclaimed meat eater. I mean, previous to this, and I want you all to hear this really well, because I think sometimes, we think some people have, they just have more self-discipline, or we put all these excuses out, we compare ourselves, and we don't realize that there's, typically there's a science to discipline. And so before, I would call myself, I was a self-proclaimed meat eater. I would tell people that I'm a carnivore. In a past life, I'd be joking around. But I said, in a past life, I was a lion. How can you take meat from a lion? Right? One of the other things I used to say is I'm a Leo. And so, I got to have my meat. And so when I talked to vegetarian, I couldn't even understand. Like, I couldn't even rationalize in my mind how somebody could be a vegetarian, how somebody could be a vegan. Like, I couldn't grasp it. And so when I began to set this goal around no longer eating meat, there was a why. So let's talk about the why, because that's another very important component to the secret of goal setting. All right. The why for no longer eating meat is because, well, I'll tell you the whole story. So basically, what happened to me is, I play basketball about 3 times a week, and I'm aging. I mean, I'm getting older. We all are, right? Mm-hmm. And I see this age challenge on Facebook, and people are saying, you look the same. I'm like, all right, speak the truth. But because not everybody looks the same. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. But and part of it is because we're not setting the right goals. We're not eating right. But I digress. So I'm playing basketball, and my knee, in particular my left knee, hurts bad. But both knees were hurting. And a lot of us who play sports and things like that, as we age, we begin to experience this. And so my knee's hurting, and it's getting worse and worse. And eventually I started looking up remedies for knee pain. And everybody's been here. You start to do some research. You may get on Google, you may get on Pinterest or whatever it may be. And as you're doing that, you start reading all these different things, and you find the things that you want, like the things you want to read, you read that, and the things you don't want to read, you don't read, right? So they had these different remedies, like, just wear a different brace. So I'm like, all right, cool. Because the thing I didn't want to read was, are you eating too much meat? They'll have a little line in the subject, and it will say, eliminate knee pain by eliminating meat. So I wouldn't click on that. Yeah. Right? I wouldn't click on that, because that's not what I want to do. And we've all been there. And so, I did everything else to no avail. Still the knee pain. I'm icing the knees. I'm doing all the things. And so finally, one day, I forget my ice packs. Now, anybody who, plays sports, they know how important those ice packs are to you when you get done playing. Partly because not only does it decrease the swelling, but it numbs the pain. All right? So I decide to, I leave these ice packs at home, and so I'm like, let me rush home and go ahead and put them on. But as I'm driving home, the throbbing in my knees was so bad, like I was almost in tears. And the reason I'm telling this story is because I want you to understand the why. Like, my why behind taking on this goal was to increase my ability to move and eliminate the pain in my knees. All right. So that was my what for doing something radical, like taking on a goal as radical as not eating meat anymore. When I say meat, I mean pork, chicken, beef, poultry. So any turkey, all those type of things, right? My wife and I will still eat certain fish. But that's it. And certain fish, not every fish. Okay. So we stay away from scavengers, etc. But my point in saying this is I was clear on my what for. So now I set the goal. And what I said is, all right, by June, I set the date. Actually, my son was being born that year. Okay. And so I said, when he comes into the world, I want us to have a brand new diet. So that way he doesn't know anything different than this diet. Okay. And so I set a time frame. And again, one of the things we talked about last week in terms of goal setting a hardcore time frame that allows you to either one, be successful or to fail. So I set this time frame, and if I'm not mistaken, it was like April, May, by the end of April, by the end of May, I'll no longer eat meat. And there's a couple of reasons why this is important. Is I'm drawing a line, and I'm also allowing the opportunity for breakdown. Now, what is a breakdown? A breakdown is when you don't keep your word to yourself. A few weeks ago, we talked about personal integrity, right? And by the way, personal integrity is personal. Nobody else can tell you whether or not you have personal integrity because only you know your intentions. In this case, the intention is to no longer eat meat, right? To no longer eat meat. Now, if that's all I did, I will tell you right now, I would not have been successful with the goal. And you might be saying, well, Linal, you did all the things that you teach. You had your what for, right? Your goal, like why you have the goal. Not only did you have the what for, but you wrote it down, right? So it was written down. It was time bound, right? The other thing I did is, I also had my reverse milestones. So I gave up certain meat a little bit at a time, right? We already had cut back on beef. So now it was like, all right, no more bacon first. Okay. Right? And then like chicken and turkey were the last things to go. So you're like, Linal, you've done all the things that you talk about in your book. What's missing? Why do you say that even if you had done all these things, you may not have still reached the goal? The reason I say that is because there was no mental fuel. There was no mental fortification for changing a habit like that. And that's one of the things that we don't honor the power of a habit. In, I believe it's chapter 4 of my book, what I talk about is what will you stop? And I'll talk more about that chapter, but later in the book, one of the things I talk about is the power of then aligning your inputs. Let me say it again. The power of then aligning your inputs to your goal. What do I mean? So, and by the way, this is one of the secrets. This is one of the things that you can scour the blogs on goal setting. You can scour the books on goal setting. They won't tell you this. What you have to do is you have to fortify your mind. How do you do that? What my wife and I did is we began watching documentary after documentary on the harm of meat. Now, why is that important? Because like I said, you have hardcore habits. You're wired a particular type of way. And in order for you to change these habits, you have to indoctrinate yourselves. All right, think about somebody who's never been to church before. And then all of a sudden they start going to church. And they say, I've transformed my life. Maybe it's not just the church. Maybe it's the mosque. Whatever it is. I've transformed my life. What does the minister say? What does the leader of that movement say, keep coming back. It is of the utmost importance that you keep coming back so that you can learn more about how to live this life, so that you can gather the information and become indoctrinated in terms of what it means to live this life. For every last one of your goals, if you are not in the process of indoctrinating yourself, of psychologically brainwashing yourself to achieve that goal, the likelihood of your success is slim. The likelihood that you are successful with that goal, you can follow all the things that I talk about. You can clearly define success. You can have a very clear what for. We're going to talk more about that. You can write it down. What you write down can be time bound. But then if you're not feeding yourself information aligned with the vision you have for that goal, the likelihood that you are successful is very slim. I believe the stats are, that 8% of people, only 8% of people who have a resolution achieve it. And then of those 8% that actually resolve something, right? Only 10% of them actually achieve the goals that they write down. So based on those stats, what I know already is that when it comes to goal setting, most of us are no good at it. The stats say it. Most of us don't know how to keep our goals. Most of us, when we set goals, we abandon those goals. And what I'm here to do today is to help you begin achieving goals and completely transforming your life. So what happened? My wife and I, we began watching documentaries. And as we watch these documentaries, we all of a sudden, our desire for meat begins to shift, right? It's the appetite began to go away because now I'm taking in information that is actually solidifying and uplifting the goal itself. That is one of the critical secrets of goal setting that often we are not taught.